Today we are going to talk about a ghost. It is a ghost that haunts the political machinery of the United Kingdom. It is an identity that is everywhere and nowhere all at once. It is profoundly ancient, yet in many ways it is only just being born. We are talking about the English. Now pause for a moment. When I say the English, what image comes to mind? Is it a beefeater at the Tower of London? Is it a football fan with a painted face? Is it a multicultural street in London or a quiet village in the Cotswolds? The confusion you might feel is by design. Unlike the Scots or the Welsh, who have maintained a fierce, distinct cultural clarity, the English identity has spent the last 300 years in hiding. It was, to use a phrase from historians, structurally submerged. For centuries, to be English was simply to be the default setting of the British Empire. But today, in the mid-2000s, the default setting has been reset. Between the shocks of Brexit, the devolution of power to the other nations, and the shifting tectonic plates of a multicultural society, the English are waking up. They are looking in the mirror and asking a question that hasn't been asked in a long time. Who are we, really? To answer that, we have to go back, not just to the empire, but to the very beginning. We need to talk about ethnogenesis, the birth of a people. The story doesn't start with a unified nation. It starts with a collapse. Around 450 AD, the Roman lights went out in Britain. Into that vacuum came the Germanic tribes, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes. They crossed the North Sea from what is now Germany and Denmark. But here is the crucial detail. They didn't arrive with a passport that said, England. They were a collection of rival tribes. They were distinct groups with their own lineages. So, how did they become the English? It wasn't a soldier who united them first, it was a scholar. In 731 AD, the Venerable Bede wrote the ecclesiastical history of the English people. He looked at these squabbling tribes, the Mercians, the Northumbrians, the West Saxons, and he framed them as a single people under God. He imagined the community before it physically existed. That idea was hardened by fire. In the 9th century, the Viking invasions threatened to wipe them all out. It took Alfred the Great, the King of Wessex, to take Bede's idea and turn it into a political reality. He styled himself King of the Anglo-Saxons. By the time his grandson, Aethelstan, took the throne in the 10th century, we finally had a unified Kingdom of England. But history is never a straight line. The Norman Conquest, this was the Great Rupture. A French-speaking aristocracy installed itself on top of the Germanic population. For centuries, Englishness became a marker of class. If you spoke French, you were the elite. If you spoke English, you were the conquered. You were the peasant. And yet, the identity survived. It was stubborn. The language absorbed the French vocabulary. Words like government and justice. But it kept the Germanic bones. Words like house, woman, loaf, and field. The English identity became a story of resilience, of a people who could be conquered but not erased. Fast forward to the modern era, this is where the paradox truly begins. Following the Acts of Union in 1707, which created Great Britain, the English elite made a strategic calculation. They were building a global empire. To make that work, they needed the Scots and the Welsh to be on board. So, the English adopted what sociologists call missionary nationalism. Essentially, the English decided to suppress their own specific nationalism in favour of a broader, supranational Britishness. Englishness became the hidden engine of the state. While the Scots kept their own legal system and their own church, English institutions, like the monarchy or the Parliament, were simply rebranded as British. For 300 years, the English didn't need to define themselves because they were the state. They were the missionaries of Britishness. But eventually, the missionaries came home. In the 21st century, that submerged identity has resurfaced, and you can see it in the symbols. Take the flag, the St. George's Cross, the red cross on white. Historically, this was a symbol of the Crusades, but in the modern era, it has gone through a fascinating evolution. For a while, it was toxic, associated with the far right. But look at it now. It has moved from the topmasts of royal ships to the windows of suburban homes. It is painted on the faces of children during the World Cup. It has become a plebeian symbol, a flag of the people, not the king. Then there is the English psyche. We love to talk about the stiff upper lip, don't we? The idea that a true Englishman never cries, never complains, just keeps calm and carries on. Here is the irony. That phrase is an Americanism. Research shows that the stiff upper lip wasn't even known in Britain until the 1870s. The Victorians adopted it because they were obsessed with Darwinism. They convinced themselves that emotional restraint was a sign of evolutionary superiority over savages who wept openly. So, if the stiff upper lip is a myth, what is real? It's the irony, it's the banter, it's the ritual of the queue. For the English, queuing isn't just about waiting your turn, it's a symbolic expression of fair play. To jump a queue is a moral failing, and to complain about it, well, that requires a specific noise, a silent tut, a shake of the head. This is the social oiling that keeps the nation running. But we cannot talk about England as if it is one solid block. We have to talk about the internal frontier, the north-south divide. This isn't just about money, it's about the very sound of the voice. Linguists call it the trap-bath split. If you are from the south, you take a bath. You use a long vowel. If you are from the north, you take a bath. A short, sharp vowel. It sounds trivial, but people have been judged, hired and fired based on that vowel sound. The north is often associated with industrial heritage, grit and warmth. The south, power, wealth and, well, snobbishness, if you ask a northerner. We are seeing this play out right now, here in 2026. Think about Rotherham in South Yorkshire. This is a town that was built on coal, iron and steel. When those industries vanished, it left a fragmented identity. People identified with their specific mining village, not the town itself. But look at what is happening today. Following its designation as the Children's Capital of Culture in 2025, Rotherham is reinventing itself. It is pivoting from a narrative of left-behind struggle to one of creative ambition. It is building a South Yorkshire soul that includes the Roma community, the Pakistani community, the white working class. This is the new Englishness in action, place-based, proud and gritty. However, we cannot ignore the political earthquake. We have to talk about Brexit. When we look at the data from the 2016 referendum and the years that followed, one thing is undeniably clear. English identity was the primary driver of the Leave vote. While 75% of people are happy to be both English and British, there is a specific group that identifies as English, not British. And that group, they voted 85% to leave the European Union. This was a reawakening of a political Englishness that felt ignored by Westminster. In fact, surveys showed that a vast majority of English Leave voters were willing to risk the breakup of the Union, including Scottish independence, just to get Brexit done. This is a profound shift. The English were once the conservative unionists who would do anything to keep Britain together. Now, many are prioritising England over the Union. And this brings us to the final and perhaps most difficult frontier, race. In a multicultural society, who gets to be English? Historically, British was the open door, a civic identity you could sign up for. English was seen as ethnic, white, Anglo-Saxon, closed. But the 2025 data shows us something fascinating and slightly heartbreaking. There is a push for a civic Englishness, an identity based on shared values, not blood. But we are not there yet. Here is the paradox. White adults in England are actually more inclusive in their definition than we might think. Only 9% of white adults believe you must be white to be English. But when you ask ethnic minority adults, 24% believe that being white is a requirement. Think about that. The people excluded by the label feel the barriers more intensely than the people inside the label realise. For many immigrants and their children, British still feels like the safe, legal tent. English still feels like a private club they haven't been invited to. So, where does that leave us? To be English in the 2000s is to inhabit a state of organised chaos. It is an identity that is disentangling itself from the British state. It is an identity that is ancient, tracing back to the fall of Rome, yet it is also brand new, being rewritten by grime artists in London and young creatives in Rotherham. It is a condition marked by a dry sense of humour, a deep scepticism of authority, and a fierce love of the local. The English enigma is no longer hidden. The ghost has stepped out of the machine, and for the first time in centuries, it is speaking for itself. Thank you for listening.